Welcome to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska on Big Cabbage Radio.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to Ag Matters. This is your host, Ken Hoffman. I am a farmer out here in Palmer. My business's name is Matsu Microgreens. We grow vegetables year-round, but I'm also the executive director of the Alaska Farm Bureau. So if any folks out there want to maybe take their gardening to the next level and become a real farmer and sell commercially, you should totally reach out to us. Our website is alaskafb.org, but you could also email me personally at khoffman@alaskafb.org. Cool. So we've got a friend of mine calling in today, Farmer Scott Mugrage out in Delta. Hi, Scott. Thanks for calling in today.
Good morning, Ken. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. It's a little chilly out here, but I'm sure it's chillier up north. If you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself, maybe how you became a farmer, and then how you ended up settling in Delta and what your farm produces. So, yeah, tell us a good story.
Well, I was born and raised farming and ranching in the Midwest. We had a rather large farm, a family farm that my uncles and cousins and grandfather and dad and brothers, and we all farmed together in a large group, large way. And I was always the livestock guru on the farm, I guess. You know, that was the thing I was craziest most about. I went on from there to work and then finally own a livestock auction, and I've been all over the country doing different cattle feeding operations and ranching and feedlot, where I ran a commercial feed yard for several years in the Nebraska area. And then, gosh, we found this place up here in Alaska. I wasn't looking to ever come to Alaska, but my son found this turnkey operation up here, and the only problem with it was when we turned the key, nothing ran. But we've been up here now 13 years, farming and ranching. I don't know. I suppose we have one of the larger herds of cattle in the state of Alaska. We market our beef from the tip of Homer, Alaska, all the way to North Fairbanks and all places in between. We currently raise most of the feed that our cattle consume, including barley and oats for grain and all the forages and stuff and the like. And we also sell hay. We sell quite a bit of hay, and we sell it far and wide too. We've sold a lot of hay down on the peninsula, and they're in the south central, and as well as the Fairbanks area. But yeah, we farm about 2,500 acres and run several hundred head of cattle and feed grain finish, feed all of them out. And so, yeah, it's cool. I've been doing it long enough now. I think I've got the gist. It's cold up here in interior sometimes, so we'd manage pretty well. All of our cattle are outdoors, never in a building. Pretty healthy that way. Keep the wind off of them, keep them well fed, and they do pretty well.
Yeah. Okay, so you said 13 years ago you settled in Delta?
Yep.
Okay, and what's the name of your farm?
Mugrage Hay and Cattle.
Sounds good.
I farm with my son and his family, and he's got 3 boys here, and then my wife as well, Julia.
Okay, yeah. So would you say that most of your business is selling beef, or is it mostly hay?
No, absolutely the most is beef, yep. We do market, like I said, year-round. We finish our cattle on grain, so we have cattle available 365 days a year, and we market mostly wholesale through meat market. A lot of meat markets. If you visit a meat market, you likely might be getting our product. Local markets anyway throughout the state.
Okay, so when you purchased the farm 13 years ago, did it come with the beef, or did you somehow bring the herd on up, or how did this happen? How did you get so many cattle up there?
Well, they had a small operation here, and I shouldn't say small, and they'd been feeding cattle for years too. They weren't doing it on a year-round basis. They were sort of trying to get out of everything before winter, like most farms do. We wanted to see, and our focus was, could we market year-round? Could we carry those cattle over? And we do that through just a simple way of staging them on feed. And it's it was easy. It was something come natural to me. I've been in the cattle business since I was a wee little kid. So, and then doing it here was just figuring out the ins and outs of the weather mainly, I guess, and the supply chain.
Okay. So what are some of the biggest challenges with raising beef commercially up in Alaska as opposed to down in the lower 48?
I would say basically it's just a supply chain thing and the service. We have a real issue in Alaska, and it's something we've got to stay focused on and try to fix. But we don't have enough slaughter capacity here to grow much. We've got to fix that in the future, and I know there's some work going on continuously trying to improve on that part. But that's the biggest challenge, I guess. The weather. I think you overcome that with just learning how to responsibly feed and take care of them.
Okay, so you said slaughter, like butchering the animals. It's tough up here in Alaska.
Absolutely, not near enough capacity. Yeah, especially USDA slaughter capacity. There's only 3 plants within the state, and we're a very, very big state. Much unlike our predecessor in the lower 48, they have markets or facilities all over the place. Multiple states. You can cross state lines and do things. And here we are just so vast and broad, and we're sort of in a conundrum. We don't have enough livestock to support a big old thriving processing and slaughter field, but we have to have that available before we can really grow more livestock. So it's quite the conundrum.
So why could I just grow a cow, like one cow out in my yard, and then slaughter it myself, butcher it, and then sell the meat? Is that legal, or does it have to go through a certain process, like a USDA facility?
So you can do that legally. It's called custom exempt, and you have to sell the live animal, to the person that is going to be consuming it. And then they can't sell that meat to anyone else. So if you wanted to get it into a retail outlet, it has to be killed under the USDA inspection, which is a free service, by the way. I mean, a lot of folks have mentioned, well, why don't we have state inspection, get around that? You're not getting around anything by doing that. USDA is a free service, and the enforcement that they put upon you for cleanliness and security, that's written in your own plan. You plan how to keep your food safe and secure, and or your process safe and secure, and that they just make sure you follow your plan.
Okay, so does the farmer have to follow certain USDA protocol, or does it all fall on the slaughter facility or the butcher?
Actually, all falls on them. That's probably the drawback in why we don't have more custom harvest places, is because it's daunting to keep up with all that, and probably it's not a glamorous occupation as well.
Yeah, meat cutting I don't see a lot of kids growing up and saying they want to be a meat cutter.
No, but if you ever get into it and you do like it at all, I mean, some people are very passionate about it. They create things out of a carcass. When they can arrange stuff in a meat case, and cut that and take pride in knowing they did this, and it's sort of like the farmer taking pride in his meat and the quality of it. If that butcher takes the same pride in what he can present in that meat case, and so it's a worthy occupation. It just doesn't come with lots of glitz and glamour.
Yeah. Now, let's say if you hired out a USDA facility to do the slaughtering, but then the farmer wanted to do the butchery and selling of the meat, so taking the carcass back, cutting it up into pieces, packaging it nicely, and selling it. Could a farmer in Alaska do that? Or does the USDA facility have to, basically, once they have the animal, they see it all the way through till it gets to the customer?
Yeah, they either that or it has to at least be done in an approved facility to be sold. So, like in my circumstances where I sell carcass beef to processors or meat markets, they can legally cut that meat and sell it. They can't sell it into the restaurant chain. They can't sell it to another retail outlet. They can only cut it for themselves to sell in their retail outlet. The farmer can't take it home and do it himself, although a customer can. If those meat plants allow it, customer can pick up, process their own beef. We have a lot of people that miss out on maybe getting their moose or something, and they'll buy a half a beef instead, and tend to want to cut it themselves, and so that's a doable issue.
Okay. All right. So you're saying what it sounds like to me is that one of the biggest barriers for livestock producers, commercial livestock producers in the state of Alaska, it's not the raising of the animal, but it's the slaughtering and retailing of the animal. Would you say that's correct?
That's correct. Yep, it is.
Okay. Well, I guess that's something that Farm Bureau can work on. If you wouldn't mind talking about your involvement with Alaska Farm Bureau, that would be great.
So, not long after I stepped into Alaska farming, I was approached by some of the neighboring farmers around here to come to a Farm Bureau meeting. And, I come from Illinois, which is a country financial insurance company state. That's their headquarters state. And so in Illinois, you're kind of born into Farm Bureau, That's just kind of a necessary need. But I was never all that active a participant until I came to Alaska. And I saw the need for all of the work that needs to be done by someone to make sure that we're not over-regulated in agriculture, or, when there are rules developed or something that they align with the farmers' needs and not make it more difficult to farm. And so the need to be a Farm Bureau member to me stuck out pretty big. And I worked my way up through the ranks and was officer in my chapter, and then a director for my chapter, and eventually vice president, and then I've been serving as president 6 or 7 years now, I think. And so I get to represent Alaska farmers clear back at our nation's capital, and I also serve there on the board of directors for the American Farm Bureau. And what an honor. I get just my last board meeting, we visited the White House and talked with many of the secretaries under the president, and it's an amazing thing in the way advocacy in Farm Bureau works. It all comes from the grassroots. We do things for our membership, and the members drive what we do, and it's very rewarding when you have successes.
Amazing. So what would be some reasons that farmers here in Alaska should become a member of Farm Bureau? What are the benefits to that farmer? What would you tell someone to join?
Well, I think one of the main things is where we advocate in state for like I said, trying to keep rules and regulations that will work for farmers and not against farmers. Sometimes our legislators, they've not been exposed to the farm, and they don't understand what a rule or a regulation they're creating can how that can affect an individual farmer. So they need to hear our story, and that's what we're about. That's what our leadership and roles and stuff. I think it's important for all of us. If we want to protect what we do, then we should all be advocates. And then the mentorship, I've learned so much from other Farm Bureau members, and as well, I hope some of them have learned some things from me. And that outreach and advocacy, those meetings that we have, and we have an annual meeting coming up here in November in Anchorage, and those meetings are so important to attend and learn what's going on and learn from others.
Yeah, for sure. And at that meeting, we're going to be asking members, what their priorities are for Farm Bureau to advocate for? I know American Farm Bureaus, I think one of their taglines is the voice of agriculture. We allow the small farmer to have a voice in the capital and in their particular industry. But in this annual meeting that's coming up in Anchorage, what are some of the priorities that Farm Bureau has, Alaska Farm Bureau has, that we want to start working on?
Well, I don't know. I like those ideas to come from all of the membership all over the state. I know there's in the recent years we've been having some issues with ag tax, especially down on the peninsula. There's some areas down there where they're trying to get some alleviations of tax on agriculture buildings and stuff. There's, of course, the talk of having a Department of Agriculture. As you might know, we're one of only 2 states in the nation that does not have a Department of Agriculture or a secretary or that has the ear of the government or the governor. I think that's an important step that we need to get across, and I hope we're going to cross that road this coming year. We really need that connection. We've had drought and different things go on here in the last few years where we've needed government help, and we ran completely out of feed here a couple of years ago. And the government stepped in and helped with some transportation costs to get that feed in state. And sometimes you need that support, but we also need to ear the governor so that support gets to us in time. I felt like this last term of support, it didn't really get there in time, even though it's valuable when it did come. But that's one of the big priorities, to get that passed. I guess we've looked for several years. We've tried to get the railroad to complete a couple of places out on Point McKenzie to the port there. That railroad needs to be finished. There's a line from up near North Pole that needs to be finished down to Delta Junction. That would connect our farms all around the state. And when we have these periods of bad weather in one particular spot in the state, and say we don't raise a lot of forage in that spot, we could move product. If we had that rail all around, we could move our products from an area that had a good year, successful year, and we could move that forage product at a reasonable cost to an area that didn't have a good year. I've seen that in my operation, in my sales of hay. I've seen that year after year in different locations. Like I said, we've got microclimates, large microclimates, and small, and we're a very large state.
Well, thank you, Scott, for coming on the program. To finish us off, would you mind telling some of the listeners maybe where they could purchase some of your products, your beef?
Oh, my goodness. You can ask for them by name, but Matt Valley Meats has been a long-time customer of ours and on the Palmer-Wasilla Highway, also the Charcuterie Number 9 in Anchorage. Bear Mountain Meats, they're a great outfit. They sell a lot of our beef. Midtown Market up in Fairbanks. McNeil Canyon Meats down in Homer. There's many, many more. Arctic Harvest Deliveries. Many, many more, and we continue to hopefully grow that as we get more stability in this state for food security.
For sure. And then also, if there's listeners out there that want to join Farm Bureau, but maybe not just join, but also get involved, maybe become a chapter officer or something like that, what's a good way for a farmer to do that, and how can people follow what Farm Bureau is up to?
Hey, we've got a website, alaskafb.org. That's a great way to start. You can join right there from online. You can find out about our events, sign up for events. There's a lot of new things happening. We've got a great new executive director, and there's a whole lot of optimism and hope for what the future's going to look like. We've got a great new communications director, so you're going to see a lot more outreach from Farm Bureau if you're a member. I can't wait. I'm excited. Our annual meeting is a great place to start. That's a place to get excited, to learn from, to mentor with other members. That communication is outstanding. And we bring in speakers from all over, from out of state and all over to speak to what, maybe your current wants are. And that's how you can get something. If you got an interest. And we don't serve you in that interest at an annual meeting or a seminar put on throughout the year, then your voice is what brings us those ideas. And, you can help. You can be a volunteer and help arrange for someone to come and speak.
Yeah, I agree. I'm incredibly excited for the annual meeting. I love Farm Bureau mostly for its networking opportunities, meeting other farmers that have a similar worldview or life experiences. It's just a great time to connect and meet new people and share ideas. So thank you, Scott. Anything else that you want to let the listeners know about you?
I'm really proud, and I can't think of many things off the top of my head that we've done, but I am extremely proud when we make an accomplishment, and it's something that is truly rewarding. And I want to say, like the RTCP program that's available here in Alaska, we got that fully funded a few years ago. We've even raised the limit, changed the appropriations for that, and that was all direct work we did with Senator Murkowski's office. There's lots of great accomplishments like that we have had. We've kept things out of regulation. We've helped guide the regulations that were formed. There are so many great things that this organization does, and it all comes from our membership. It's what our membership desires and wants and needs. I urge you to be a part of it, to join it, embrace it. I can't think of a better way to lead agriculture in Alaska.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for your time. I look forward to seeing you in person in November, and I appreciate everyone listening to this show and listening to Ag Matters and Big Cabbage. Please support us, and thank you, everybody, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska on Big Cabbage Radio. Ag Matters is a production of Radio Free Palmer, recorded at our studios in Palmer, Alaska. For more information about this program, email manager@radiofreepalmer.org.